Hi everybody, Briana Whitney here, host of True Crime Arizona, with our legendary former reporter, Mike Watkiss.
Pleasure to be here.
Yes, I mean, so we've been working together on this story, this series now for about, it's run this week, but I know this is decades and years in the making in terms of the FLDS, what has happened within that community and that cult.
It's a big story.
It's a huge story. So we want to get our viewers, our podcast listeners kind of up to speed. We've been reporting on a series called Stolen Innocence. The first story ran on Monday, the second story ran yesterday, or on Tuesday, the third story ran yesterday, and then your last one's running tonight. And for those who don't know what the FLDS cult is, I'm sure people have maybe seen videos of it. You can see videos here on your screen, and we're going to talk more about what these are. But what is the FLDS cult?
Well, the FLDS faith, and if you want to call it a cult, and I think most people do at this point, it's a religious group that has been around for well over 100 years. They broke off from the Mormon Church, and we could do Netflix series document on the history of the. But it's a group of fundamentalists who practice polygamy, who went down to Colorado City and Hilldale, what formerly known as Short Creek, and now have a 120-year, very elaborate history of prophets and prosecutions, and people. Much of that story has been told. We're really talking about a guy who broke off.
This guy that we're seeing
right
here.
This guy,
Sam Bateman.
Yeah. And the one thing I can say is I have spent nearly 40 years of my life chasing guys like Sam Bateman. This is the first time where one of these guys came and chased me. And
the reason we say that is because you had this bizarre encounter with Sam Bateman. So we'll get to that in a second, but let's just even set up who Sam Bateman is. So a lot of people are familiar with the name Warren Jeffs. And while we're explaining this kind of backstory, if people want to write in, we're streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, things like that. If you have any questions for us, we want to answer them live. So, so as people are listening and watching us, a lot of people know Warren Jeffs, this infamous prophet of the FLDS, and he is in prison for life. What was he doing that then set the stage for this guy, Sam Bateman, to do what he's doing? And as you can see here in the video, this is his followers.
Very good question, and it really they so do tie together. Warren Jeffs has now been incarcerated, for people who have been keeping track of the story. He's now been incarcerated in Texas, or behind bars, for 18 years, most of it in Texas, where he's going to die in prison. He is still very much in control of the FLDS Church. And the one thing, people always call him a self-proclaimed prophet. I would argue that Warren is actually a bona fide prophet, recognized by thousands of people. Sam Bateman, on the other hand, is a self-proclaimed. And Warren's FLDS community has now scattered. Their leader has been locked up. He puts out messages. They've really lost control of Hilldale and Colorado City, so they've scattered to the wind. And they're now these sort of frayed edges of the FLDS community, and that's where a predatory guy like Sam Bateman came in and just feasted, picking up these people who are desperate for somebody to follow. And he abused them, exploited them, raped the children, took the men's wives, stole, made them go buy lavish vehicles. I mean, took advantage of these people at every level. In many ways, Warren had done much the same, but he's locked up now, and this guy wanted a piece of the action. And in a space of 3 years, this story just really spun out of control.
So Sam Bateman, it starts his kind of reign, so to speak, in 2019. Now, he did not have the number of followers or anything like that that Warren Jeffs had.
You're seeing the pictures of this.
Correct.
This is a funeral for Warren's father, and that's a brother of Warren that you're seeing there. And you'll never see video like that again, because after we shot that, they realized it was not good optics to have one man with 60 women around them, and we've never seen that again. But over the course of time, Warren had a huge group and still has a very significant. Sam, 50 maybe at the peak.
Not nearly what Warren had.
But still every bit as dangerous, because and this is I've been thinking about being pulled back into this, and it's good to be back in the hunt and chasing these guys, but it really depresses me, because basically we're now telling a story that is exactly the same story that I started telling 45 years ago, that we told in a documentary on the station 20 years ago. ago. The faces have changed, the perps have changed, the victims have changed, but the story remains pretty much the same.
I mean, it's a history repeats itself situation.
Totally.
I know it evolves a bit, but as we were talking to people for the story, it seemed like everybody feels like, you know, the one prophet then sets the stage kind of for the next, and the next one builds on top of that and kind of uses the playbook they learned from one and then kind of puts their own style on it. And all of this in the name of religion, but it's sex trafficking.
It's totally sex trafficking, and the that's a load. What you just said is all true, and sort of you need to sort of pull this all apart. Why do people get involved with this? What is the power of these guys? I mean, in many ways, I have come to conclude that there really is just a cult 101 playbook that Warren has followed. That every cult, and I've covered them in various religions, and you know, they separate people from their family. They tell them, I'm the only one that say your salvation. The end is coming. So there's a lot of the same nonsense that these guys peddle. And everybody talked about Sam being a very smooth talker. I can confess he was a smooth talker. I didn't want to meet this guy, and he called me and conned me into meeting him in that park on the strength of him just not saying no. And, you know, when he gets in the ear of the susceptible people around him, these young women, he can be very damaging, and even behind bars. So I think people should be concerned. Warren is still getting out edicts from his Texas prison cell, and I would argue directing his followers to commit crimes that, you know, my journalist daughter and I have been covering this story now for 3 years, and it repeats itself. Sam's a dangerous man, and even behind bars, as long as he has sway over these young women, it's a bad situation.
And so that's been something that the judge has been talking about in court for these different hearings, and also some sentencing hearings for his adult wives. The number one issue that people were taking with the terms of what they could be sentenced to and what happens from here is, do not let him have contact with his followers or these children from behind bars.
Well, and I think that you know, the old adage, when somebody shows you who they are, believe it. Sam Bateman has been arrested twice. They sent him to Coconino County Jail after the traffic stop. What does he do? He gets on the phone, instructs his followers to delete incriminating evidence. He's breaking the law behind bars. They take him down to Florence. He gets on some tablets, starts talking to his followers, and says, kidnap the girls. They did. So Sam has orchestrated and committed crimes from behind bars already. So you throw him away, but let him talk to these people. We just got back, my daughter and I, from Colorado City, where we found, you know, the houses that Sam owns, and they're still full of people and full of young children. That's a concern.
Because it's not going away. That's the thing. People, I don't think, realize. Sometimes Warren Jeffs was locked up. We now see Sam Bateman, who's going to be sentenced here shortly. We have adult wives sentenced, and yet the FLDS is still functioning. Yeah, don't be. Well, and I told people, you know, everybody was kumbayaing when Warren was prosecuted and thrown in jail. And I said, this just made him more powerful. It made him a martyr to the cause. And as long as he can continue to communicate, he's every bit as dangerous. So throwing these guys in prison is a good thing to do, but it sure as hell doesn't stop the problem. So let's take people a little bit through chronologically. Sam Bateman starts to have some power in 2019. What they're seeing on their screen right now, can you explain what's going on here? Because this is an odd scene. That's you and Sam Bateman standing in front of these wives. There you are. And some of his followers as well, who are facing...
And one of the men who you see in that is one of the men who is now charged and really was the financier. Provided Sam millions of dollars for his lifestyle.
So what are we looking at? What's happening here, and how did you end up in a park with Sam Bateman and his followers?
I'm happily retired and didn't want to really have anything to do with this story ever again. And I got a phone call from a guy out of the blue just before Christmas in 2021. He says, I'm Samuel Bateman. I'm a new prophet, and God has instructed me to meet Mike Watkiss and the Queen of England. I mean, I'm thinking they're looking at the one person they revere and the person they most revile. And so anyhow, with that, I'm sort of hooked now. This guy's crazy. He definitely wants to see me. I'm a little worried about his obsession. So I agreed to meet him in a park in Phoenix. I take my son and my daughter-in-law down just to shoot some pictures in case they want to blood atone me, or, you know, these given my history, this is, you know, I'm thinking of these things. So anyhow, the bottom line is we get to a Phoenix park where I arranged to meet him not far from my home. I think I'm going to meet this guy and he's going to sermonize me. He's going to tell me I'm a horrible person, whatever. produces these 25, 24 women and girls, and my blood just rose cold. I'm thinking, this is every red flag of every story, and why is this guy showing this to me? We shoot. I don't know what's going on. We shoot. My son and daughter-in-law shoot the video of these young women and ladies singing to me in the park. I immediately go home, get versed on Sam Bateman. My sources tell me he's everything you think he is, and then some. They say law enforcement's already on this. I get on the line to the FBI early 2020, and this is one of the things I really am looking for in this court. I want to see the time frame, because we now know from our work that a lot of people were dropping the dime on Sam. I dropped the dime on him 8 months before. Called the FBI again 4 months later, asked, "What are you guys doing?" My question is, if we hadn't had this traffic stop, just sort of out of the blue, lucky break for cops, would Sam still be doing this?
He might be.
Would the feds were they really serious? I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think maybe they were, but I want to go into, we've had a history of having to force law enforcement to take action. I'm gonna hope that this is one of those times that law enforcement proactively was on this guy.
They definitely knew about him. I mean, the FBI was definitely made aware of him before anything happened.
That's way before.
So the singing happens. You don't really know what's going on. You take video in case it's something you might need it down the road.
I think this is going to be of evidentiary value, and these are victims, and I want to have all their faces in case they start disappearing to Mexico or Canada, which they can do.
So that happens in 2021. What you're looking at now, this body camera footage, is this traffic stop. This was in 2022, in August of 2022. And so that's Sam Bateman in handcuffs. But this isn't because this specific traffic stop is not because somebody said these girls right here are being abused. It was because he was pulling this trailer with horrific and deplorable conditions. These girls were in the trailer, and people saw their fingers coming out of it, and so reported that there was something nefarious likely in this trailer. That's when they were pulled over in Flagstaff. And watching this body camera footage is very interesting. Sam is very reluctant to say who he is, and he gets kind of snide and kind of sassy with the police officers who are just trying to understand, okay, who are you? What are you doing with all these women and girls? What is this? Like, where are you going?
Yeah, and I would bet the cops very much like at me. As soon as they saw this, they knew exactly what was going on.
Well, and we've talked to the people in our series, like Faith, who escaped the FLDS.
One of the heroes, and the women have always been the heroes in this story. And our friend Faith is again the next generation, really stepping forward to protect her sisters and nieces.
And her sisters were involved in this, both adult and younger. And she was saying that, and you can see it on the body camera footage, when they start to ask the girls about who they are and what's going on, they are just won't say a word. And Faith was talking about how they were trained to do that.
Yeah, that is well rehearsed. As soon as you talk to cops, don't tell them anything. The old phrase was, answer them nothing. And this was a mantra in the FLDS church, and it still holds today.
So he's arrested for this, taken in, he bails out, he's out. And then he's rearrested when the FBI goes and raids his Colorado City.
Right. I mean, after the first bust, they set him up, probably surveilled him during that time, but their hand was forced because of the traffic stop. Again, I'm hoping that we learn in court that they were very much on the guy, but the traffic stop changed their trajectory of their investigation.
Well, hopefully it sped it up.
And this is one of the things that we have struggled with, because in the past, after a meeting like this in the park with me, I would have gone and got this guy away from his wife and gotten his face and grilled. I wanted to do that and sort of but we held back. I'm now wondering, should I have blown the whistle on this guy before and saved 8 months of child abuse?
Of course.
But I was thinking that I didn't want to get in the way of the feds, so I'm looking for some personal, because I feel some guilt. If these guys were not serious about it, maybe my daughter and I should have just blown the whistle on this guy when we knew 2.5 years ago.
It's hard because obviously knowing what we know now.
Yeah, that's it.
We didn't know how you didn't know how this was quite going to play out, or what the FBI knew or didn't.
I didn't know what they knew, but I knew that after my moment in the park and the sources I had, that this guy was wild trouble. And as soon as we had this, I came here and I made sure that the station was watch for this guy's name, because he's going to blow up in the headlines.
So he gets out. And then he's rearrested. They raid his Colorado City home. More girls are rescued. So at this point, there's 9 underage girls that were rescued. The thing is, Sam, from behind bars after he was rearrested, is still in contact with his adult wives. Now, the adult wives in this situation were also culpable for quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
And
some much more than others.
Sure,
yeah.
there was a range, but there were several adult wives involved here. They were destroying evidence, they were hiding things from the FBI, and they were scheming with him to kidnap the 9 underage girls who were rescued from state custody and take them, and somehow they successfully do that. They do that.
Sammy pulled off, orchestrated a kidnapping from a Florida jail, and 3 of his wives carried it out, and 8 girls got abducted up to Spokane, Washington. You know, and again,
for a few days.
This is the kind of thing that I'm worried about the system. With these kind of things. We know that Faith was blowing the whistle to Child Protective Services, and they went up early.
Yep.
But I'm not blaming anybody, but you do enough of these cases. Why does it keep happening? Worker goes up there, and these people say it didn't happen. No.
Right.
And that's and beyond that, they don't seem to have much power. I'm not blaming them, but I'm saying that doesn't work very well. And these kids are still, So again, I want some reassurance that this was an example of law enforcement doing the right thing, other than just a bunch of people blowing the alarm and then getting lucky with a traffic stop.
Right. And I don't know if we'll know that. It'll possibly come out during sentencing and maybe the followers trial, but we may not know. So Sam originally, this time now, after, is slapped with more than 50 felonies, and we're talking child abuse, conspiracy, everything. And going through some of the court documents, it's very disturbing. He kept a journal. And so a lot of this evidentiary, the writings, are from himself. And he's talking about how God's telling him to take Jane Doe number 9. The girls aren't named in the court documents because they're minors, they're underage. It said to take them, and they need to be punished and things like that. And he's orchestrating these hotel room orgies.
With children.
Sex activities with underage children.
It's disgusting. Days, but it was horrible. And there was one hearing that was fascinating when Sam took his deal. The judge, Susan Brnovich, basically read about a 15-page statement which outlined literally every sexual assault, every group sex, every transfer. And Sam had to stand there, little dopey Sam had to say, yes, I did that. Yes, I did. All of his followers watched. It was an extraordinary hearing.
So bizarre.
But so Sam this is not an allegation. Sam took the plea deal, but he has copped to 51 of the just nauseating.
But the plea deal was only for 2 counts.
And that's what he got.
And that's the thing. So he was slapped with all these felonies, but in the end took 2. Now the thing with the 2 is, one of them, they are big too, so we're looking at, I think, between 10 and 25 years in prison for one of them. The other one could carry a possible life term. So, of course, people who have been victimized and who are involved want to see him in prison for life. Some of his followers are supporting him, hoping he gets less. But what was bizarre was his plea deal was only contingent on if all of his adult wives who were charged in this also took plea deals.
And the Fed, it was like a mafia trial.
Yeah.
They made all the defendants come in, listen to the mob boss take the fall, and we're hoping that it was going to make it easy for them. They'll all take plea deals because the prophet took it, and we should follow them. Well, some of the followers, including the 2 brothers, the 2 men, all said, no, we're not going to do it. Which begs the question, are they going to blame everything on Sam? Or are they going to say we didn't do it? I'm fascinated to see what their defense is going to do when they get to court. But, and then to see what this judge ultimately does with Sam. And, he's got this plea deal that says 20 to 50. I think the judge can do whatever she wants, and I think she gets this. In the sentencing of the 3 women. It
varies, though. We could see a range potentially for him. That's what's kind of crazy about this.
I would bet that given and they're going to go in and he's got a lawyer that's going to talk about mental competency and a bunch. I think the judge is going to lower that. Sam is the instigator of none of these people, and these people are right. None of these people would have done any of these crimes if it weren't for Sam.
Right. He was the start of this all. Now, that being said, the adult wives did take plea deals. Some of them have already been sentenced. They were given 2 and 3 years in prison.
Prison time. The judge gave them prison time, and they were really, some of the least culpable and maybe most sympathetic, because they're going to get an expert in there to say, these women have been very damaged. They've come through this. They're damaged. It's a sexist, abusive, misogynistic world, and we should be sympathetic. And all of that is true. All of that is true, but they're also going to get somebody in there and say, there's a lot of people who have gone through the exact same thing, and they've pulled their heads out and do not allow their children to be raped by guys like Sam Bateman.
Now, it was interesting being in court for the wives sentencing, the ones who have faced it so far, because some of them said, you know, I understand the wrongness of what I've done. I understand that we can't treat children like this, but you still had two of them who said they consider themselves spiritual wives of Samuel Bateman.
Yeah, sure.
And the judge expressed this multiple times in terms of how much prison time am I going to give them. She said, I'm afraid once you guys get out, you're going to go back to Colorado City and start doing this exact same thing and amassing other underage girls for this plan. And so I think she wanted them to be rehabilitated enough, deprogrammed enough to be able to serve their time and get out and not fall back in this trap.
Yeah,
do you think that's doable? I mean, do you think they can do that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Some of these wives sound like they're just, you know, really, I mean, they're, you know, and often in the families you'll get the older women who become the sort of enforcers of the law.
Got it, yeah.
And I think there's some of that in this, Sam. But we know, you know, Faith and the people in Worth and some of the folks who have, they've gotten their young people out, and they're apparently doing very well.
Right.
You know, the mojo of the FLDS Church goes back generations. The mojo of Sam Bateman goes back 4 years. He's a blip on the map. He's a horrible man, and this is, and really the town. One of the stories we did tonight,
and that's what you're saying.
The town has rejected this, and we're really helpful in busting Sam and outing Sam. The mayor, even FLDS followers we talked to, faithful members of Warren Jeffs, said they were dropping the dime on Sam because they said he ain't us. Which I thought was a fascinating development of this story.
One of the adult wives, Leah Beislein, her father was there. He was a big follower of Warren Jeffs. He was sent away by Warren Jeffs when Warren Jeffs sent.
Yeah, he's one of the men that has been abused and had his family just tattered
ripped apart
by Warren.
Yet he said he believes Warren and feels that Sam Bateman is the devil and a fraud.
Right.
And so it's interesting how that mindset works for these people.
Yeah, and it's hard.
I
mean, I think how people, it takes a long people to get out. Some don't get out. Some they're sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, it's powerful mojo. And there are bad guys like Sam Bateman, and then there's a lot of people who are really sort of victims who have done a lot of really bad things. They need to be held accountable. But, you know, when you have a perverted, you know, self-obsessed guy who just wants nothing but to take care of his appetites, and then you have willing people to give over their critical thinking, Warren and guys like Sam, feast at the table.
Right. So Bateman was supposed to be sentenced tomorrow. That's actually why we started doing the series this week like we did.
It's moving target with all of this.
And it's hard. So these are federal cases, which are even more unpredictable. A lot of these things are continued, which means that they're delayed. So now his sentencing is supposed to take place in October. Interesting, though, because we thought his sentencing would happen, and then next month the trial for his two male followers would begin.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be the case. However, Sam Bateman is on the witness list as possibly testifying in their trial.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Well, it sure would, and so would Warren Jeffs. I mean,
that's I've been in about 5 courtrooms with Warren, and his behavior is always a little bizarre. And they put Warren on the witness list. I don't think for a second they're going to bring him here, but it would be very entertaining.
It'd be wild to see that. Wow, yeah. And the thing is, this witness list was very extensive. I mean, and look, for big cases, we are used to having a lot of witnesses, but not this many. I mean, we're talking more than 50, 60 FBI agents. There was somebody from the United States Secret Service. You had Warren Jeffs on there. You had Sam Bateman on there. Yeah. And part of the problem, or maybe part of the factor in this, is that some of these families are just so large. They all, you know, there's a lot of kids.
Right.
And so to have all of the people in the family testify, you have to go, there's quite a few to get through. Now, the witness list could be that some of these people end up being called and testifying, others might not be, but these are people who potentially could be called. And the defense was calling Warren Jeffs, I believe. It was the defense, not the state, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, whatever you're going to do with Warren, it'll be a show. When he represented himself in Texas, it was truly the most bizarre trial I've ever covered in my career.
And
so I can only hope that Warren's going to make an appearance. I doubt that. You know, and the prosecutors with these kind of cases, you're dealing with young children who are victims, and so they have to be sensitive about how much trial do we want to throw at them.
Right.
What young people, you know, and with one of the young men, the guy who paid for all of Sam's Bentleys and stuff. He is accused of basically sexually assaulting, and a crime that could put him in prison for the rest of his life. You know, how do you present that? And you bring the young victim, and prosecutors indicated they were going to do that, but I think they have to be immensely sensitive who they bring on the stand and, you know, what they do with them. You know, these are gut-wrenching cases.
Yeah. Oh. So tonight, your piece in just a little bit, about an hour, the last piece of Stolen Innocence is going to air. Can you tell the people a little bit about what it is? You go back to Colorado City and it's different than it used to look.
Yeah, well, it really is sort of my daughter and I. It's an homage to Short Creek because I have spent 45 years covering that town, and most of it's been in a very unflattering light. And I love that part of the world, and I love a lot of people up there. And the town has utterly changed. If you haven't been to Colorado City and Hilldale in the last 8 years, go, because it's more like, you know, one of the other sort of tourist. Yeah.
Sure, maybe like Sedona
or Kanab or something.
Sure, yeah,
and yes, Moab. It's a beautiful place. It's utterly changed, and the people who have gotten out from the cult and come back and have rebuilt it are taking an entirely new direction.
Right.
I love the place. I hope people go and check it out. Just that's my endorsement and my daughter endorsement. But the thing that was really interesting, we got up there, and amid all this change, everybody was talking about Sam and how, look, we just got rid of Warren.
Right.
And now this guy comes and tries to set up shop, gathering up women in two of his homes. And the town wants it very clear. We stood up and put a stop. We talked to the mayor, a great person up in Hilldale, an FLDS member who again said, FLDS, Sam ain't us, as much as he wants to claim that.
Right.
So it's just really interesting to see how this town has gotten past its, the cult past and wants to stay past it. And it's really a fascinating story.
It's a good wrap up of the series too. And so that's going to air in about an hour.
Yeah.
And just to end, we did it. And just to end things too on a good note, Faith Beislein is in both of our stories. She escaped the FLDS. She was the one kind of whistleblowing Sam. And I think a good piece of information that you'll see in these stories is that the girls that were rescued from Sam Bateman's trailer in his home, she is now caring for, and she talks about how well they're doing. And they finally have an opportunity.
That is really, and this is why we've been doing it all these years, and it just really is about hearing stories about kids getting out and being safe. And throughout a lot of people are going to tell this story and continue to tell this story. If they're not telling the story that women, a handful of brave women and a few men who got out, no sideline guys like me are the heroes. It's the people like Faith who have moved the needle and made all the difference. And so, it's been an honor to tell their story, and I'm glad that we're focusing on Faith because she's really representative of this long history of women standing up and making change.
Absolutely. And so now these girls are finally going to have a chance to be able to live their lives. She talks about them doing well. I mean, it's going to be, it's a whole new world for these girls.
Thank God.
And that is something that a lot of them, and Faith herself said, I never knew I was going to see my sisters and my nieces like this. She thought this wasn't possible, and it was.
She's a great person.
So his story is, the last one of this series is airing on Channel 3 here at 9 o'clock. And then after this Q&A, stick around. We're going to play the full series of Stolen Innocence. So you can see it from start to finish. Leave comments. And if you have even more questions and want to hear more, Mike and I recorded a podcast on the True Crime Arizona podcast.
Yeah,
it came out on Monday.
That was a pretty deep dive.
It was a really deep dive. And I think that's a great resource for people who want to learn a little bit more of the backstory.
Just for maybe, since we sort of I came out of retirement, my daughter and I have been doing a YouTube channel called Story Hustler, and we've got 30 episodes on the latest of Warren and Sam Bateman. So, there's a lot of good reference. People are going to be covering this story. It's going to be a big deal. I know that one of the major cable networks, some of the news magazines are going to be here. And so it's an important story, and I'm glad it's getting an audience.
Absolutely. Yep. So stick around for parts 1 through 4 of Stolen Innocence. Go to the True Crime Arizona podcast if you want to learn even more. And of course, we'll be here to update you guys as the year goes on with what happens with Sam Bateman's sentencing and also the trial of his followers that's upcoming this fall. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
That was good.
I think there's this idea that you are nothing without this prophet.
There are people back here. You should be praying that you will be given to a husband who will prove faithful to the end.
And so if that prophet's been missing from your life, you feel like empty. You're missing a piece of yourself. And so you look for someone to take up that role.
How old are you? 11?
They're in a cult. Their brains are not their own.
No, ma'am. No. You're not going to decide the outcome of this?
Sam Bateman has utterly shattered my family into a million pieces.
It's a world now in the rearview mirror for Faith Beislein, or so she thought. Once a member of the FLDS polygamous cult, she severed ties the older she got when she realized what was happening was not at all normal or legal. First, it was the infamous FLDS prophet Warren Jeffs, now in prison for life for sexually assaulting underage girls he called spiritual wives.
Warren Jeffs gets locked up. The FLDS church is looking for some type of leadership, somebody to build them, to bring them to God. And Sam steps into that role.
2019, Samuel Bateman emerges as a self-proclaimed prophet, taking in multiple wives and child brides as young as 9 years old.
It's very disgusting. So these young girls that were roped into these situations, they didn't know anything about sex. And now, how are they gonna know what normal is?
Bateman's manipulation and abuse would span 3 years across Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and Nebraska, holding activities he called sacred ordinances and sacred missions. Court documents now show those involved sexual activity with the young girls and his adult wives simultaneously.
A lot of the manipulation from both Warren and Sam, I would say, comes from their ability to get people to not trust their own intuition.
Can you shine a light on some of the words or phrases or the way that they would talk to you to instill that thought?
So, for instance, you'd bring up a question like, well, this is confusing to me. They would be like, are you questioning God?
While Faith had left this painful world behind, many of her sisters, her brother, and her mother had not. Now, they were following Sam Bateman and being married to him.
I knew that my little sisters were being abused. That's when I knew that I had to do something.
In 2021, Faith sent in a tip sheet to the FBI.
I didn't have a lot of hard evidence for them, and I think that's probably why they couldn't act.
You don't just wake up in the morning and say, I want to be a pedophile today. So it's been growing until it got to 2019.
Matt Browning is a retired undercover detective who took down white supremacist groups and now serves as intel and infiltration of cults for law enforcement.
How do you think he got away with it for as long as he did?
He is a closed, secretive society. That's how. This whole thing is human trafficking at its finest. That's all they're doing. They're trafficking kids for the purpose of sex.
But trying to guise it under the...
And disguising it under religion.
But everything would change in August 2022.
What's your name, sir?
Finally, something would give them away, more sinister than even authorities could believe.
I talked to an FBI agent that told me, Matt, you will, and at that time he teared up, you will not believe what happened to these kids. Sam is a twisted individual that because God told him to do it, he's not going to change.
August 2022, an unusual scene is unfolding in Flagstaff, Arizona.
What's your name, sir? Simon. See the hands! Let's get everyone out of the car.
FLDS prophet Samuel Bateman, several adult wives, and underage girls pulled over by authorities.
We're getting calls about hands sticking out of a vehicle, out of the trailer.
They were groomed, they were brainwashed.
Do you guys have names?
They were trained to not say anything to government authorities.
Authorities opened up the trailer to find horrific circumstances for the girls inside, including a bucket as a makeshift toilet. Faith Beislein, who escaped the FLDS, had family members in that trailer.
When you saw those pictures of the conditions, how did that resonate with you?
I didn't realize that he was doing that. I didn't know that it was that bad.
Sam Bateman was slapped with more than 50 felonies, yet bonded out, only to be rearrested in September 2022 for obstructing justice. And that's when authorities removed 9 children from his Colorado City home. From behind bars, he helped concoct a scheme with his adult wives to kidnap the 9 underage girls from state custody in November who were rescued. They succeeded for a couple days until the girls were found in Spokane, Washington on December 1st. In April 2024, Bateman agreed to a plea deal for just 2 charges: conspiring to transport underage girls across state lines for sex acts and conspiring to kidnap them. Retired undercover detective Matt Browning now works to infiltrate cults like this.
Why would you possibly plead down anything when kids are being hurt the way that Sam Bateman hurt kids?
They took plea deals too, and at the end of July, 3 of them were sentenced to 2 and 3 years in prison.
Leah Jo Beislein is my daughter.
Leah Beislein was one of the 3 wives sentenced. Outside court after the ruling stood Liddell Beislein Sr., her father.
She's just a victim. As far as I'm concerned, Samuel Bateman's God is the devil, and he's a fraud.
Yet Liddell Beislein Sr. is still part of the FLDS. During the sentencing, it was revealed Leah still considers herself a spiritual wife of Sam Bateman.
And I was sorry to hear that. I would hope that, and I still believe that all these people will eventually come around.
That remains to be seen, but there are people who are starting to form new thoughts and beliefs. The young girls who were rescued 2 years ago from Bateman's home and that trailer, the trailer that still sits on Bateman's abandoned property today.
It's different for each of them, but for the most part, they're doing well. They're in school. They have all decided they do not believe in Sam Bateman anymore.
Faith Beislein now helping care for them, all of them now between the ages of 13 and 18.
They're so focused on growing up and like exploring the world and like seeing all these different options out there and like, what do I want to be when I grow up? You know, these are things that they didn't get when they were there.
How difficult is it to deprogram a child's mind who has grown up in this environment?
Well, first of all, you have to be with somebody who has left that, who can understand and know what that is. They have to feel love. They have to feel trust. I don't think people realize the length of Faith wanted to go to get these people shut down. And amazing, amazing what she was willing to sacrifice and do just on her end.
Faith, like many others, now waits to hear the fate of Samuel Bateman. His plea agreement recommends 20 to 50 years behind bars, but one of his convictions carries a possible life sentence. While she only hopes the rest of her family will eventually leave Bateman and the FLDS behind, she's focused on helping the young girls heal, who now have a full future ahead of them for the first time.
I never thought that I would see my little sisters like this, my nieces like this. The world is their oyster.
Briana Whitney for Arizona's Family.
As a young girl growing up in this community, did you ever think that you'd be sitting in this office?
No, sir. I did not think the opportunity would ever arise.
Hilldale, Utah Mayor Danya Jessup is what you might call a Western pioneer. The first woman to ever hold Hilldale's top office. During her 7 years on the job, Jessup has overseen a truly remarkable transformation in her town and neighboring Colorado City, Arizona.
I think the good things that are happening here speak for themselves, and the businesses that are popping up are different kind of businesses than we've ever seen pop up here.
Add to that a new office complex, multi-unit apartments, vacation rentals, excellent public schools, and a large shopping center. It's a long way from where the community was not long ago, when the twin border towns were best known for being under the cult control of polygamous prophet Warren Jeffs and his FLDS church.
And ladies, build up your husband by being submissive.
Following the death of his father Rulon in 2001, Warren Jeffs ushered in the darkest era in this community's history. Hundreds of large families torn apart, prominent men exiled, and younger girls married off by Jeffs to his polygamous followers.
There's not enough girls to go around for them so they can have all the wives they want.
Then there were the Lost Boys, hundreds of young men forced to work as children, then abandoned and exiled as they came of age, all at the orders of Warren Jeffs.
An active fugitive investigation continues.
There have been nationwide manhunts, high-profile prosecutions, and of course that infamous raid on Jeffs' compound in West Texas.
Mr. Jeffs, did you rape those 2 girls?
Prosecutors in the Lone Star State securing the conviction that sent Warren Jeffs to prison for life for raping 2 girls, ages 15 and 12. That was in 2011. This is now.
I rebranded Hilldale right when I got into office, and the rebranding was so important. It used to be Southern Utah Deseret, and now it is Hilldale City Welcome Home.
Many of them, like the Lost Boys or others once exiled by Jeffs, who have returned in large numbers and are now building a new future.
There aren't very many of us left here in the community.
Most of Warren Jeffs' followers abandoned the community long ago or were evicted for not paying taxes. Esther is one of only a handful of FLDS faithful who still live in Colorado City and Hilldale, where the past and the present collide.
A lot of people, when they come back here, they see all the changes and it hurts.
Raymond Hammond is the brewer and part owner of Colorado City's now famous Edge of the World Brewery, a brewery that couldn't exist under FLDS control.
We still have our FLDS locals, and they're still here, and we love them. But, this town is no longer controlled by the cult, and we're grateful for it.
But perhaps nothing demonstrates the community's changing dynamics more than the reaction of locals to a man named Samuel Bateman.
We will not put up with that in our community. Don't come here and think you're going to set up shop and do those kinds of things. We won't put up with it.
And that's why Jessup and others in the community were alarmed and angry when Samuel Bateman began attracting lots of attention, claiming to be a new FLDS prophet, driving around in Bentleys and Range Rovers, and gathering up nearly 24 women and girls as his plural wives in his 2 Colorado City homes.
Some of the girls Sam had were 12 years old, that were sleeping with 40-year-old men.
Ruth Stubbs was only 19 when she became one of the first brave women to stand up and speak out publicly about the many abuses of FLDS prophet Warren Jeffs. For Ruth, hearing the Sam Bateman story like reliving a nightmare.
So they've been so told what to do their whole entire lives that they feel lost, that they don't have someone to follow.
Esther is a faithful member of the FLDS church, and she says that she's happy Sam Bateman is behind bars.
We absolutely do not condone Sam and anything that he did, and there were many FLDS that were willing to help bring him down and put him in prison.
That was the community getting involved and saying, no, this isn't happening here.
So the public's clear. Long before he got pulled over at Flagstaff, a lot of people in this town were dropping the dime on Sam.
Absolutely.
With so many people sounding the alarm starting in 2019, some now wonder why it took law enforcement until late 2022 to bust Sam Bateman, questioning that if the traffic stop had not happened, whether Samuel Bateman would still be trafficking and sexually abusing children. Should law enforcement have jumped in sooner, do you think? Or
Law enforcement couldn't jump in sooner. They had to have the evidence. We've known that, from past Warren Jeffs. It took so long to get that taken care of. You have to have evidence.
And now a mountain of evidence and a full confession in court about to send Samuel Bateman to prison for decades. And many in the community now hope that this finally marks the end of this chapter in history.
I wanted everyone that had stayed here but now live in a different community to feel like they were home, welcome home. For those who had left and are coming back to the community, welcome home. And for those who have never been here and have no roots, welcome home. We want you here.
On a cloudy day in late December of 2021, this unusual scene played out in a Phoenix park. More than 24 women and girls, some holding babies, all adorned in fundamentalist attire,
There's just no room for darkness in our lives.
gathered around a picnic table to sing religious hymns. Their audience, me. The performance orchestrated by this man, Samuel Bateman, a man unknown to me prior to this unique meeting. During the previous week, Bateman had repeatedly called me, insisting that we meet face to face. Bateman claimed that he was a new prophet of the FLDS faith. He boasted of owning 2 Bentleys and 2 Range Rovers, and he told me that he had been instructed by God to meet Mike Watkiss and the Queen of England. As it turns out, the Queen passed away a few months later without ever granting an audience to Bateman. But when I reluctantly agreed to meet with Bateman at this very public Phoenix park, he showed up with an entourage of women and girls, referring to them as his ladies. The bizarre interaction brief. After 2 songs, Sam headed back to Colorado City with his ladies, and me left feeling like I had just been to a crime scene. Having covered polygamous communities and their self-proclaimed prophets for decades, the red flags were obvious. I notified local and federal law enforcement about my encounter with Bateman, and then sat back and waited.
Come over here, please.
Let's see your hands!
Fast forward 8 months.
Is he the driver? Yeah.
It was August of 2022 when Samuel Bateman suddenly found himself in the center of a very real crime scene when he was pulled over in Flagstaff towing a trailer behind a truck. In the truck, 2 young women and 2 young girls. Then the shocking discovery, 3 more underage girls locked inside the cluttered, unsafe, and unsanitary trailer, each of them wearing wedding rings.
I would have liked law enforcement to get involved sooner. Human traffickers are using religion to do human trafficking, and I think this is an example of that.
By your calculations, how many of your family members are still devoted to Sam Bateman?
Probably between 10 and 15.
Faith Beislein and her brother Worth know the story well. 2 of their brothers, 2 of their sisters, 2 of their nieces, even their mother, all followers of Samuel Bateman. Many of their faces seen in the images from the park and on the body cam footage from Flagstaff.
I hope Sam gets locked away for forever. They throw away the key.
Sam Bateman has utterly shattered my family into a million pieces. I knew this was coming. I know the way that these cults go. This is the end result.
That end result could put Sam Bateman away forever. While behind bars after his arrest in Flagstaff, prosecutors say Bateman directed his adult followers to abduct 8 underage girls from protective DCS custody. They were tracked down a few days later in Spokane, Washington. Among the girls, 2 of Faith and Worth's sisters.
They absolutely should be held responsible. They're adults. It sucks that their mind is being controlled by someone else, but they are adults, And child abuse, child sexual assault is a very black and white issue.
Faith and other family members now actively involved in the lives of her 2 teenage sisters, rescued from Sam Bateman and his cult.
How are those young women doing and what's going on in their lives?
It's different for each of them, but for the most part, they're doing well. They're in school. They have all decided they do not believe in Sam Bateman anymore, and they want to live their own life.
Facing 51 criminal counts and a mountain of evidence, Bateman would strike a deal with federal prosecutors, pleading guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of a minor and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. As part of the plea, Bateman had to acknowledge his 3-year crime spree in open court, starting in 2019 when he began proclaiming himself a prophet, admitting to taking the daughters and wives of his male followers, transporting underage girls across state lines, and having sex with those young victims on multiple occasions. Bateman faces at least 20 years in prison.
I don't think that he really deserves to be walking around. He's too manipulative. He has too much influence over too many people, and he's done some very, very terrible things.
Sam is just one in a long line. I think they're going to keep coming as long as there are people who don't have critical thinking skills and who are looking for a profit.
And Faith believes that Bateman continues to pose a threat even behind bars because he still has devoted followers living in homes full of children. We recently knocked on the doors of Bateman's Colorado City homes, and while we could hear people inside, no one answered.
There are a lot of little children who are being cared for by followers of Sam. I think as long as Sam does not have communication with his followers, those children are safe. The minute he starts to have communication with those followers, the door opens for them to no longer be safe.